Hello. Welcome to day 4 of the Linking Your Thinking conference. So happy that you're joining us today. Very excited for this one because I'm here to learn alongside of you. So our featured presenter today is Tracy Winchell. How are you doing, Tracy?
I'm great. It looked like it was going to rain this morning, just outside Fort Smith, Arkansas, and it looks like it's shaping up to be a very nice day.
Well, that's great news. So Tracy is someone that I found on Twitter and don't know as much about as some of the other people who are deeply started kind of in the Obsidian community. But there was something that like compelled me to reach out because everything that she says seems to be, I don't know, there's like a deepness to it, but also a lightness and always your interesting humor there. And just if I can read a little bit about Tracy, began a broadcasting career as a talking Christmas tree. But I mean, maybe it went downhill or uphill. It's up for you to decide. You became a television journalist afterwards, covering Bill Clinton as governor and president-elect. And you've been a DJ at the local radio station, participating in a weekly 12-step program for anger, resentment, control issues. And a lot of what you bring to the linked thinking tools for thought space seems to be about teaching self-awareness and using technology to help with that. And that seems to be what we have in store for us today, understanding our three selves and why it's important to connect all three. What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah, that kind of sums it up. It's when you say it like that, it's been an exciting life, and it's sort of like, are you sure you did that, Tracy? And
Yeah.
so, yeah. My thing is most definitely self-improvement through self-awareness, and all of the things that entails, confidence that we can change with effort. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Please know that I am not an expert when it comes to being a power user at anything. When I need to do a trick, if it helps me in what I'm trying to do inside my vault or my graph, then I'll ask somebody for help. But anything that looks like it's going to provide me friction, I don't want nothing to do with it, as my folks would say, or my aunts and uncles would say. So what do you say we get started? I've built this entire presentation in Obsidian, because this is a skill that's absolutely worth having. And I'm enjoying getting to know Obsidian from the practical side of things. And what I'm about to teach you is a piece of the most valuable skill that I continue to learn, and that is journaling helps me tell myself the truth about my relationship with my creator, the world, and my relationships with the humans that I love and the world around me. So journaling, you know, we know in a lot of cases that we need to do something, and that something is X, when the reality is, how do we go step by step to even X? And I hope what I'm providing you guys with is exactly that opportunity to arrive at how to do the thing that you need to change in your life. So a little bit about me. Since 2012, maybe 2013, I've been involved with a faith-based 12-step framework. I dealt with anger, resentment, control, and self-doubt issues, all stemming from the death of my dad. Later, I lost my job. It was on the front page of the paper just because it was a high-profile job. I didn't do anything wrong. The city board simply said, we don't need your position anymore. So by this time, I'm dealing with a lot of self-doubt, and that's kind of where my story with all of this that I'm about to teach you begins. A friend of mine in the 12-step group shamed me, ironically, into participating in a Thanksgiving month gratitude list. And I thought, well, this is kind of dumb, but I'm going to do it anyway. What's amazing is that I may have journaled 3 days a week, but I did it for 60 days. And I used day one, interestingly. So that was my first digital journal. And I walked into work one morning and my friend said, Winchell, what's different about you? I was like, what? So I kind of like, what do you mean? I diagnosed it. And it was just that the gratitude practice was changing my brain. So in 2015, after I lost my job, I sold the house that I'd lived in for 20 years, moved in with my amazing mom and my ancient dog Winchester, and Ms. Astor, the cat. So I was starting my own business, a consulting business in the public relations and marketing space here locally. And what I realized is that I needed a way to get my next day self going in the morning. And what I was doing with that next day self, I was berating me. I was saying things to my next day self that I would never permit anyone to say to people I love. As we'd say around here, them's fighting words. I'm just not going to allow it. So why am I allowing myself to treat myself so badly? So I set up some parameters that I'll share with you later about how I would engage my next day self with this note to next day self. Turns out it was kind of like a dragon slaying exercise, with self-doubt being the dragon. I can't wait to share that with you. In 2020, Rome comes on the scene. I loved the people who were on Twitter, and I ended up saying, okay, I really want to learn Rome. I'm not techie. The best way I can learn to use this functionality, block references and linked thinkings and all of that, is to adapt this note to my next day self to Rome. What's amazing is that I shared that technology on Twitter with the earliest of linked thinkers, and that note to next day self really took off. And I still marvel at that, at how many people this note helps day to day. My friend Andy said, the note to next day self makes me a better dad. There's so many more things like that, but I think that's the most touching one for me. So what we're going to learn today is how to tap into your past and your future selves so that your now decision maker, which is in the driver's seat, makes some solid decisions on your future self's behest. Sound good? Y'all good? So what we're going to do now is, well, I already talked about that, so let's just move on. This linked thinking really is a whole lot more powerful than when I wrote my note to next day self in my notebook. And I'll show you how this works, because the linked thinking gives us mind-blowing linking possibilities and capabilities. And we're going to do that exercise first. Now, here's the trick. A lot of us don't know the person we want to become. I do have some exercises for that, but honest to goodness, Mike Schmitz presented earlier this week his personal retreat structure. I would say give that a watch. So I think we've set that up well. Now this is exciting. A lot of us want our linked thinking systems to help us with these things. And in fact, I pulled these straight from Nick's keynote address when he did a crowdsourcing poll. So this is you guys in no particular order. All of these things are related to journaling. Here's how that works. I can flesh each of these out separately, but in the interest of time, I'm going to do this really quickly. 4 things in common. We're learning to trust the wisdom of our past selves. Like when I create a note in my Zettelkasten and I forget about it for 3 or 4 weeks, I come back to it and I'm like, whoa, who wrote that? That's awesome. Oh, it was me. Nobody else is in this graph. And maybe you do that too and get these moments of adrenaline where you're like, ooh, I'm kind of awesome, at least in some things. So the other part of this, we're going to envision a better future self beginning today because we see the progress we've made in our past self. We believe that our today self guides us toward a fulfilled future self. Say that 3 times fast. We're also systematizing accountability. So here's how that works. I've already kind of run across that. When we review our previous notes, we have a lot of confidence that we're improving. When we envision a better future self, again, we're seeing this proof of growth, which gives us confidence in our ability to meet our best future selves. When we align our actions and our attitudes, there's a whole lot of peace in that. Look, I'll be 59 this year, and I wish I had known in my 30s what I know now about the importance of really making sure that my now self is behaving and thinking in a way that I say is the person I am. So I hope this helps you at least with that, even if you never do a note to next day self. So we're basically going to just identify what's holding us back, and we're going to discover what gives us that dopamine hit. And then we're going to refine our daily actions based on those pieces of data. So one of the ways I systematize accountability is I will project a note to my future self that says, if I want a deadline, an internal deadline by next week, I'll say, Tracy, a week hence, how close are you to being done with X, right? So that's my accountability. I know I'm going to meet myself in the future, and I'm going to have to look at that thing, much the same way as we would do a deadline in a productivity system. The other thing I like to do is if I'm struggling with a negative mindset, I'm going to ask a close friend or my mom to say, hold up that stop sign when you see me saying XYZ, because I don't want to be that person anymore. So we've run across that. There are the connections. All of the things that you may want to do in your graph all point back to a journaling format. I was really excited to see Nick's, I never can think of it. Nick, your encode framework. That's it.
Yeah.
We're
encode.
Encode. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. But here's what we're going to do. This is going to be fun. I need y'all to wake up and join the party. Open your vaults, please. Everybody got your vaults open? Nick, we have any questions that we might need to?
So we have a couple questions, but I think we're good to hold those off until later. Hopefully, we are opening our vaults. Take advantage of this live session. There's something magical about being live. So, get those hands on the keyboard, see what you can do.
This is really simple. My friends Matt and Andy on Twitter discovered this thing called semantic goldmines. Matt is a psychiatrist, so I tap into his wisdom a lot. When I think I know something and it's a gut feeling, I often will go to Matt and say, is this right? Does that make sense? Also, one of my closest friends is a therapist, so I have people to bounce these crazy ideas off of to see if they are somewhat related to science, because I think that's really important. I don't want to make stuff up. So we're going to set a 3-minute timer, and what you're going to do is look in your graphs for any one or two of these things. I want, I need, I will, I hope, or I can't. And I want you to kind of search around. You probably won't have time to do all of these, but one or two. And I'm going to set a 3-minute timer. Farah has a question here. How do we search this? In your graph, anytime you have written one of these things, got about a minute. You're welcome to post some of your revelations in the chat, but I recognize that this may be private. But I'd love to see some of your responses if you're willing to share. Andrea, not much hope or want, lots of needs and can'ts. Yeah, that's kind of what mine looks like. Red wine, that's helpful. All right, all done. How's everybody doing? By the way, Christian and Dean, I am using a Rode PSA1 and the Rode boom arm. Thanks for asking. Any thoughts about what you just did? Anybody, real quick, because I'm going to have us do another writing do an actual writing exercise. Isaac found an old quote. That's awesome.
It's good to see these coming into the chat.
Excellent.
I noticed I had some of all of them. The I want was the strongest for me. I'm not sure what that says.
Does it? There's no need to judge it. You know, it's instructive. That's all we're going for, is no judgment, but instruction. Okay. Let's do another 3-minute timer. And I'm going to pop these questions in the chat. What unexpected insights have you discovered about yourself? And how might this revelation change your thinking and or your actions? This second one is super important. I don't ever want to leave somebody hanging. You know, I want you to make an assessment and then know what you need to do about that. I'll hang up and listen now. Okay, about 30 seconds left. Jennifer, I do not journal in Obsidian. I continue to journal in Rome. It's been years since I journaled in day one. Privacy concerns, security concerns, none. I don't mention other people's names. I don't give a whole lot of details in my life because I know how to write for my future self that no one else will understand. Great question. All right, all done. Tobias, I can ask myself why I wanted something and make it clear if I still want it and make actions for it. That's amazing. Renee, many plans, few results. Tony, I'm treating my Zettelkasten as a second computer and not a second brain, feeding it only facts and logic, not the contents of my mind and emotions. Tony, that is awesome. That is awesome. Thank you. Christian says, since I started noting in Obsidian in 2021, I seem to be more solution-oriented instead of problems-oriented. Nick, Dan, do you guys see anything that I missed that you think we really need to highlight here before we move on?
There have been a few, but I've been reading so many of them, I'm trying to find them again. I mean, the one about being angry, I realized I was being angry with the person because they reminded me of my past self, which to a certain degree I still did not forgive. I mean, that's pretty deep in a short amount of time. So I just wanted to call that one out some more.
I have the same struggles. I understand it. Of course, your experience is going to be a lot different from mine, but you're not alone. I deal with that too. Awesome. This is so cool. All right. We had a question a little bit ago about what's the connection with our three selves? I think I'm going to answer that at this point. That's the goal anyway. I've read a lot about our three selves. This is one of my favorite books for learning about our three selves with a whole lot of journaling prompts. Personality isn't permanent. But my favorite explainer, because it's so concise, is from growingresilient.com. Our past self exists as the person in our memories. And this goes back to the anger piece. We often have feelings of regret, blame, or unfairness around the experiences of past self. This is absolutely normal. And I think a wonderful piece of keeping track of our thoughts, our actions in a linked thinking tool is that we better remember the good things that were taking place, even as we remember some painful things that happen. Again, growingresilient.com defines your present self, lives in the present tense. That is you right now. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to focus on the present self because we're getting stuck worrying about our past self, being angry at our past self. Totally get that. Or we are not sure we're good enough to be the future person we want to be. We're concerned about things that are out of our control. And when I talk about a future self, I'm mostly talking about attitudes because there are a lot of things we don't control. We do control our attitudes and our actions toward those things. It's a hard lesson to learn, at least it was for me. So our future self is going to adapt to an uncertain future. We just don't give ourselves enough trust. Our future selves are really good at adapting, which gives us confidence. I hope that answered the three selves question. So in our now self, we prepare our future self by building habits, skills, and experiences to guide us toward that ideal future person, like behaviors and actions and character, really. One more piece about our three selves. Dan Sullivan has been writing for a long time about the gap and the gain. He recently turned it into a book with his writing partner, Benjamin Hardy, who wrote this book that I just shared. Here's the gap. We measure ourselves against our ideal, our future self. We're in the gap. Here's what that looks like. This guy right here. Man, it seems like we got a long way to go, and we're never going to get there, right? Until we look behind us and we see how far we've come, which is all about the gain. We're going to see more clearly that progress. We look behind us and say, man, I've gone 500 miles. Looks like I have 1,000 miles to go, but all I got to do is that thing I just did 2 more times, and I'm going to be where I'm going. And so that's how we experience happiness, confidence, and satisfaction that comes from achieving blank. You get to decide. So this linked thinking piece opens an ongoing dialogue with our three selves. There are 3 reasons why you should consider writing a note to your next day self. And I'm going to breeze past this because we've got some links to download all of these in your favored graph. And in fact, I have this written and posted in Obsidian Publish. So these are the 3 reasons. I mentioned earlier that I had no bumper guard guidelines when I first started writing to myself, and I was out of control. So I realized, okay, I can stop writing this insane note that I'm just bludgeoning myself with, or I can contain it and leverage that note to help me be kinder to myself. And these are the bumper guards that I wrote. We're going to do a neutral to affectionate salutation. Dear next day, like in this case, dear Friday, Tracy. And the dear is so hard sometimes. If you're struggling with that, then you might want to ask yourself why, but don't get stuck in it, because I'm going to ask you to use that endearment anyway. Eventually, if you do this 2, 3, 4 days a week, you're going to figure out your hesitance in terms of greeting yourself warmly. Bumper guard 3, own today's victories. We talked about that a little bit ago. We get so caught up in shame and guilt for what we've done. So it's time now to build a bank of the good things that we've done today, especially in relationship to how our today selves have helped our tomorrow selves. Because we're also going to acknowledge where we blew it today. Like one of mine is, you spent an hour on Twitter this afternoon and you didn't get to thing X. So Friday, Tracy, you're going to have to deal with that and all the other things our past self has said you're going to have to do, right? So again, no judgment. We're just going to own it and explain the consequences to our next day self. Guideline number 5 is show ample grace for today and tomorrow, which is the importance of showing that grace. Own it. I did that. Sometimes it happens. We all get sucked into Twitter sometimes. So we're going to show that grace. And now we're going to say, you've got that one extra thing to do tomorrow, Tracy, but you can get this done. Now, the last piece, respectfully, Thursday, Tracy. I'm always shocked when I actually use the word love. It's really hard to get that mindset, but you'll know you're arriving when you use an even more affectionate or endearing term for your next day self. Okay. Now we're going to do a demo. I don't even have my correct graph open. I apologize. This is actually a public database. Well, that's embarrassing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. If anybody has any questions or comments, now would be a good time to ask them while I get myself back in gear.
There's one from Caesar that says, I'm someone who struggles a lot with negative voices in my head that make it hard to stay focused sometimes. What can I do about that?
There is no quick fix. That's the bad news. But over time, you can get better. And I think this note to next day self can help. I'm also going to introduce kind of an algorithm that I've used for a long time that I think will be really helpful. So stick with me. And if this doesn't help, shoot me a DM on Twitter. We'll figure out how to make that happen. Okay. Now I'm back between the ditches again. So I'm going to begin this exercise in yesterday's Rome graph. And I've gone through the day. I've done all my productivity stuff. And now I'm going to shut down for the day and prepare my today self for tomorrow's self. So I have a smart block here. And this is what it's going to look like. Most of the time, my evening graph just gives me an opportunity to vent or praise or just kind of get stuff off my mind. I have a set of daily review questions that are my step 10. We keep it balanced. Where did you blow it today? What did you do well? Who do I owe an amend? Who helped me? And who did I help today? And how did that feel? So those rotate in and out. But the next piece I'm going to do is write this note to my next day self. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to copy this and paste it down here. I do need to apply children as text. The other thing I'm going to do most of the time, because I do this nearly every night, I'm going to plug in a date, which is tomorrow. That's a double way that lets me see that. Now I'm going to pop over here into Thursday. Used to, I wrote this note to my next day self. I never looked at it, especially when it was in a notebook. So this morning, I'm going to come over here and fire off my good morning. I'm going to do these. This is what I call an inside out morning journal. Inside, what's my monkey mind saying? Outside, where I belong in the world. And then I have these control pieces, and this might help when you're struggling. I have 2 or 3 of these, and I'll share this one a little bit further and how it works. But we're currently looking for, how do I read the note to my next day self? There is a query. I blew that one, didn't I? From yesterday. And there's my note for, oh, I see what I did. I kind of messed up the timing. I get lost going home at night. But you see how that works. Most of the time, I don't even use this query. Most of the time, I have in my graph or in my template, just a note. This is Tracy, check your note to your next day self. And then I just call it up and read it. That's kind of how this works in Rome. In the materials that you're about to receive, if you haven't already, in my Dropbox folder, those things are links to all of the bumper guards and the whys. I've also got a template in there in case you're struggling to get started, along with all of the things that can help you get started with your note to next day self. There's also a Loom video where I've done this in Obsidian. Again, it's super low tech, but it works for me. All right, here are the quick start downloads. I have a template for thunk notes. That's a neat linked thinking. If you haven't checked it out, thunknotes.com. You'll have the Obsidian, the LogSeq, and the Rome, plus a PDF of this talk in the links that Dan's going to share. So I want to wrap up with a couple of things. I think using my crystal ball, we're going to see the lines continue to blur between knowledge management and human management, self-management. Like, I was so excited when I wrote down Nick's encode framework. Nick, you call this a diagnostic tool, right?
Yeah, we were talking beforehand, and it's not a linear thing. It's a diagnostic tool really to recognize where we're stuck, because we're never just organizing. We're never just connecting. There's a symphony playing, but we oftentimes get stuck in a specific part. Yes.
Yeah. I love that. And here's what I've kind of done. I've taken encode. You just encountered your past self when you did the semantic goldmine exercise. You discovered a lot about yourself, right? Isn't that awesome? So you said hello to something your past self wanted or can't do, or whatever else you decided to plug in there. So now you're going to make a note. You made a note with the set of questions I asked after you did the search exercise, right? So you got a note. You posted it in the chat if you wanted. And now you get to decide, okay, what else does this connect to? If it's something good, how do I do that again and again and again? right? And if it's something you see that, not doing so well with that mindset or that set of actions, all right, let's go back and see what might cause us to repeat that. In recovery, my friends who are chemically addicted say that relapse comes long before the first drink. You see the signs. And in this case, we get to see the signs that are either projecting us forward to where we want to go or holding us back with limited thinking. Now we're going to organize that and develop it. So here is that place where we say, okay, now that I know these things, here's what I'm going to do about it. This is where we build our algorithms. And share it as an ongoing journaling exercise. Here's a look at mindset behavior algorithms. I just realized in the last month that the things that I've been writing, asking myself to respond to every day are mindset or behavior algorithms. So here's one that helps me with anger, resentment, and control issues. This is my control mindset algorithm. I will answer the question, what do I not control? After I look at my calendar, the things I got to do, what about this do I not control? Sometimes that's a pretty long list, but surprisingly, I've learned to make the today I do control list like a lot longer than the things I don't control list, which gets me really excited and motivated to start controlling the things that I can. Another algorithm, I didn't make a slide for this. This is really helpful when we're stuck. The first question is, what am I looking forward to today? The next piece is, what am I dreading today and why? Over time, these things become revealing. It helps us in by saying, I'm dreading this and here's why. Sometimes we see, oh, that's pretty silly. Okay, I'm past it. Let's do it. You put it out there, and now that it's not a scary, big, dragony monster, right? So, if you need me to go through that again, like I said, just hit me up on Twitter. Now, here's the trick. If we're really struggling with a behavior, we're going to create a report requirement. I call these bookend prompts. So with the control issue, all right, how well did I stay in my control lane today? How did this impact my day? Right? So now, as we're going through the messy middle of the day, we remember the note we wrote to ourselves about the control algorithm or the dreading algorithm. And we also know that at the end of the day, we're going to have to do the paperwork on our behavior. To me, that's a huge deterrent because I don't want to do the paperwork on saying or doing something real stupid. And so I'm reading Algorithms to Live By. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I'm just now becoming familiar. I'm not a computer nerd, but something caught my eye here from the book about caching. When we're constantly keeping something in our cache, like the person we want to become, we develop new perspectives on storage systems, memory. Here's what interests me: the banks of human life. So this applies not only to our machines, but also our heads. And by asking ourselves these algorithms in the morning about behavior or mindsets, and then asking how we did at night, in the messy middle, now we are aware every day of the person we want to be and how to get there. Isn't that amazing? Just by these simple little algorithms, responding to them a few days a week, and now we're keeping who we want to be in the front of mind. All right, we got about 14 minutes left. Who's got questions?
First of all, this has been awesome, Tracy. So thank you. And in the chat, we're doing fewer claps and more takeaways because our takeaways become our appreciation. So if you want to take a moment to type out a takeaway, I know you've probably already had a few that you've typed in there, but just take another moment and say, type out something that you've taken away from Tracy's session today so far.
I got a question here about Dear Abba. That is a practice that I have adopted, writing out my prayers, and it's based on a book called Dear Abba by an amazing human being who is a Marine, a priest, and I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. But he's published a book about prayers. He was also a recovering alcoholic, and so that book resonates with me. We not to get too terribly faith-based here, but too often we think of God as a vengeful father. And when I refer to him as Dear Abba, then that's a close personal relationship. And that's why I titled that prayer that way.
Really interesting. So we have a few more questions in here. I just wanted to read a few of these things that have
Brennan
come up.
Manning. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, Brennan Manning. Okay.
Yeah.
Ada says one of the takeaways, blurring the line between knowledge management and self-management. And I think you're onto something with that for sure. No judgment, but instruction. I will do the next day journal. This is really life-changing. I have a new perspective on journaling.
Outstanding. Yeah. That's so cool.
There are plenty of those. It looks like Dan in the chat has dropped a way that if you're on Twitter, if that's one of your platforms, share your takeaway there. And that's an excellent way for us to continue to crowdsource what we're learning by learning from each other. And we just kind of go through that encounter to expression loop. And the more quality loops we can get with the process, then the better our sense making becomes. Great transition now over into the Q&A. And here's a question. I think you can see this too, right? Tracy, the Q&As.
Yes.
Let me know. Oh, you're typing an answer into one. So
I think this would be better live, I think.
Go for it.
The frequency of your journal writings. The first thing is to start really small. In fact, I'm about to release a course and a live cohort sometime this summer that helps us remove friction. And the first thing is to start really small, like one question. We have a little exercise we go through that helps you figure out what's the best time of day to introduce a new journaling practice. Not the time that you think is supposed to be at. I have so many people say mornings are the best time for me to journal. No, they're not. You just said that because you think that's when we're supposed to journal. So we get through that part, and then we teach some. I'm not thinking of authors today. BJ Fogg sets of behavior changes. So that's a long-winded answer to increasing the frequency. You just do one at a time, day after day. And also, you don't have to be perfect. Please don't try to be perfect. Please don't feel guilty when you miss a day. Celebrate that you missed a day and the next day you picked it back up again. Remember, I started my gratitude practice. I only did that like 2 or 3 days a week. That's a failing grade when you break out the percentages. But somebody noticed before I did. I hope that answers your question, Emmett.
Let's see what
Struggle
else we
with
have.
anxiety.
Oh, keep going. Yeah.
Tobias, I also struggle with anxiety. I have a tool for that I learned in my recovery program. You want to reach out to me and I'll make sure you get the details of that, but you're answering yes and no questions. We're calling it a heart check. Am I hurting? Am I exhausted? Am I anxious? Am I resentful? Am I tense? And they're yes or no questions that you answer, every day you think of it. And then you have a plan for, now, what do I do when 4 of these are yeses? So we build these parachute plans into that so that we learn not only to recognize how we're feeling, we also learn to communicate how we're feeling. And that goes a long way to reducing anxiety. It's probably not the only thing, but it helps.
Well, that is wonderful. I'm trying to think if there are any others there that are really resonating with you, Tracy. Do let us know. I also want to make sure, though, and I lost the chat because it's moving a little fast sometimes, but this might be a good time to ask, where can people continue learning from you?
Mostly I am on Twitter. I do have a page of the products that I offer, but it's a hot mess right now. I don't think there are many Rome folks here, but I do teach a little self-paced course about 5 days to Rome, and it's mostly about journaling. But I tell you what I'm going to do. The best way to get in touch with me is on Twitter. DMs are open. I love hanging out and watching people grow. It's so amazing to do that. But next Friday, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to do a workshop about these mindset and behavior algorithms. I want it to be highly interactive. I would prefer that we have maybe 15 or 20 because I definitely want us to talk through some things and to do some live journaling exercises, because I'm going to be learning a lot too about how we build behavior algorithms. And the people who participate are going to get a chance to say, here's what I'm struggling with. How do I do that? And if I need to, I'll make up some questions on the spot and we'll just see how it goes. It'll be an alpha test. So I don't have that link right now. I think maybe Dan has it. Maybe. There
Looks
it
like
is.
one
Thank you,
just jumped
Dan.
into the chat.
So yeah, I would love for you to hang out with me because we'll just do a science experiment.
Well, that's what I've really enjoyed about this call, or this session, is the ability to kind of become a little bit more introspective into, what is this all about? I think oftentimes people want to know, how can I create more so I can get more followers or something? And I love it when we can take the conversation elsewhere into how linked thinking can actually help us in all sorts of ways. Like you're putting a spotlight on with self-management. We can use all this knowledge management as a form of self-management. And that's just extremely powerful and shows the extent of what is possible once we start recognizing how we can link things together. And it does allow us to have more awareness overall.
Yes. Sue from Huntsville, Alabama. Change the world one person at a time. When I was a kid and a brash young broadcast journalist, I thought I was going to change the world with my work. I tried that up until the time I was 50. And when I started the recovery process, I slowly began to understand the only way to change the world is to change me and to make my relationships stronger and to grow closer to my creator. That's how I change. So thank you for recognizing that.
That reminds me of, to use the connect idea, of Gandhi's quote, I believe, unless it's not true, but be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah. Easier said than done.
Oh, it's hard. It ain't easy. You get. I have a friend um, who is a recovering um, chemical. I don't like to use the word addict, and I backed myself into it. And he says all the time, God can move mountains, but you better bring your shovel.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's hard work.
hard work for sure. I'm trying to think anything else that we should cover before we get everyone out of here. I just want to really say thank you so much, Tracy,
Oh,
for the ground that you're covering. Oh, go for it.
Everett. Okay, this is vain, but I love it. Everett, thank you. You look kind of good for 59 and a hard history.
I
Actually,
think
my
it's more like
history's been excellent. It's been fun.
I read that as you look kind of good, not kind of good.
Uh, I appreciate it. It's pretty neat. Thank you.
uh, this has been fun. All right. So one last time, we're going to wrap things up with Tracy. Tracy, I'll let you have the last word, and then we're going to go back into some fun music to take us out of here.
The last word is all of you who have joined live. Um, you could be doing something else right now. And some of you have stayed up all night or gotten up really early to attend live. I never take that for granted. And I wake up every day pinching myself that I get to help people in this way. So thanks.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks so much for agreeing to be part of the Linking Your Thinking inaugural conference. You've made it so much better. You touched a lot of us.
Oh, y'all are doing amazing work. Keep it up. Finish strong.
Well, thank you. Okay. Bye bye.